Daniel Harper had not expected company. The hallway of the Harborview Hotel was quiet. Carpeted in deep blue, lights dim and warm. It was almost 10 p.m. He had just returned from a long welcome dinner at a design conference in downtown Chicago. His feet hurt. His head felt heavy from polite conversations and forced smiles. All he wanted was silence. He reached room 814 and slid his key card into the locked green light. A soft click dot. Not from the hallway. From inside his room, Daniel froze. For a second, he wondered if it was the television. Maybe. He had left it on. But he clearly remembered turning everything off before leaving. He always double-checked things, ever since Emily moved out of his apartment in Seattle 6 months ago. He had become careful about everything. The laughter came again. Low, real. A man's voice. Then a woman's. His heart began to pound. He pushed. The door opened slowly. The lights were on. His suitcase sat by the bed, half unzipped, just as he had left it. His jacket hung over the chair near the desk, and near the window stood two strangers. A man in his early 30s, tall, wearing a gray sweater. A woman beside him, long brown hair falling over her shoulders, holding a phone in her hand. They were mid-conversation when they noticed. Hey, Daniel in the doorway. All three of them stared at each other. No one moved. The air felt thick and strange. Like a scene from a movie paused at the wrong moment. Daniel stepped inside cautiously. I think you're in the wrong room. The man blinked. What? This is my room, Daniel said, his voice steady even though his chest felt tight. The woman glanced at the number near the door. 814. Yes. The man pulled out his keycard. That's what they gave us. Daniel exhaled slowly. It didn't look like a break-in. His things were untouched. The strangers didn't look nervous or guilty, just confused. The woman spoke first. We just checked in about 10 minutes ago. They told us the room was ready. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. I checked in this afternoon. I've been here since 4. The man looked frustrated now, but not at Daniel. This must be the front desk's mistake. Daniel nodded. He stepped back toward the hallway. I'll call them. He dialed the front desk number. The manager answered quickly. Daniel explained the situation in calm, clear words. The manager apologized again and again. A booking error. A rare system glitch. Someone would come up immediately with new keys. Daniel leaned against the hallway wall while waiting. The couple remained inside the room, gathering their small overnight bags. A few minutes later, the manager arrived, breathless and embarrassed. He apologized to everyone and handed the couple new key cards for a room on the 9th floor. It won't happen again, he promised. Daniel gave a short nod. He wasn't angry, just tired. The couple stepped into the hallway. Up close, Daniel noticed the woman's eyes were soft and observant. She looked at him with a kind of quiet concern, not annoyance. I'm really sorry, she said. That must have been a shock. Daniel gave a small smile. I've had stranger days. The man offered a polite handshake. Mark, Daniel. The woman followed. I'm Rachel. Her hand was warm, steady. Nice to meet you, Daniel said. Mark shifted his bag over his shoulder. We'll get out of your way. Rachel lingered for half a second longer than expected. Good night, Daniel. Good night. They walked down the hallway toward the elevators. Daniel watched them go before stepping back into his room. He then locked it again just to be sure. He set his phone on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. What were the chances? Out of hundreds of rooms in a large Chicago hotel, 2 strangers ended up inside his. He lay back and stared at the ceiling. The image replayed in his mind. The moment the door opened, the shock on their faces. Rachel's calm voice cutting through the tension. He had expected fear when he heard laughter in his room. Instead, he had found something else. A mistake. An accident. People who didn't mean harm. Still, the moment stayed with him. He got up and walked to the window. The city lights stretched across the night, cars moving like quiet streams below. Chicago felt alive and distant at the same time. He thought about why he had taken this trip in the first place. Work, yes, but also escape. Since his breakup with Emily, he had struggled with empty spaces. Their apartment had felt too quiet, too large. Every corner held a memory. He had thrown himself into projects, new designs, late nights at the office, anything to avoid sitting alone with his thoughts. Travel helped. Hotels were neutral, temporary. No history but tonight. Even this temporary space had been interrupted. He sat back down and picked up the hotel room phone just to check if it worked. It did. He placed it back gently. His mind drifted back to Rachel's expression. She hadn't looked embarrassed the way Mark had. She had looked thoughtful, almost curious. Daniel shook his head slightly. It didn't matter. They were strangers. She had said, we. She had introduced Mark Isley. There was comfort in the way they stood near each other, even if something felt slightly distant between them. He was overthinking. It was one of his habits. He grabbed his blazer and checked the pockets, making sure his wallet was still there, where everything was in place. The room smelled faintly of hotel soap and fresh linen. Normal, safe Daniel. Changed into a simple t-shirt and lay under the blankets, but sleep didn't come quickly. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the laughter again. Not threatening, unpacking, getting comfortable. Then the door opening suddenly. It could have gone badly if someone had reacted differently. If anger had taken over, instead, there had been calm. He found himself grateful for that. After a while, he checked the time. 11:12 p.m. He wondered which room the hotel had given them on the 9th floor. He wondered if they were laughing again now. Settled in properly. He turned onto his side and faced the window. Just a mistake, he murmured to himself, but deep. Down he felt something else for months. His life had followed a straight line: work, sleep, repeat. No surprises. No unexpected moments. Tonight had broken that pattern, even if it was small, even if it meant nothing. Across the hall, softly. Footsteps passed, then faded. The hotel returned to stillness. Daniel finally drifted toward sleep. Just before he did, Rachel lay, awake too, replaying the moment the door had opened and a stranger with tired eyes had stepped into her night. Neither of them knew it yet, but room 814. Daniel tried to treat the next morning like any other business trip morning. He woke before his alarm, showered, shaved carefully, and put on a clean navy blazer. He told himself the strange moment from the night before was over. A hotel mistake, nothing more. By the time he stepped into the elevator, he had almost convinced himself it didn't matter. The lobby was bright with early light pouring through tall windows. People stood in line for coffee, conference badges hanging around their necks. Daniel ordered a black coffee and turned and saw her. Rachel stood near a tall plant by the reception desk. She wore a soft cream sweater and dark jeans, her hair pulled back loosely. She looked rested but thoughtful. Mark stood beside her, scrolling through his phone, his attention locked on the screen. For a brief second, Daniel considered walking away. It would be easier, cleaner. Instead, their eyes met. She smiled first, not wide, just warm. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," Daniel replied. Mark glanced up. Recognition flickered across his face. "Room 814, he said lightly. Daniel nodded. "Hopefully everything worked out upstairs." "It did," Rachel said. No more surprise guests. Mark's phone buzzed again. He stepped a few feet away to answer it, speaking in a low voice about schedules and calls. Rachel watched him for a moment, then looked back at Daniel. "Are you here for the design conference too?" "Yeah. I'm speaking this afternoon." "That's impressive," she said. He shrugged. "Sounds more impressive than it feels." She laughed softly. There was ease in the way they stood there. Not forced, not dramatic. It's just simple conversation between two people who had shared an odd moment. Mark returned, slipping his phone into his pocket. "I've got to head out early," he said to Rachel. "Client meeting." She nodded. "Okay." He gave her a quick, distracted kiss on the cheek. "I'll text you." Then he turned to Daniel. "Nice seeing you again." "You too," Daniel replied. And just like that, Mark was gone. Silence settled for a second. Rachel took a sip of her coffee. "He's always busy," she said, not complaining, just stating a fact. Daniel didn't know what to say, so he chose honesty. That can be hard. She looked at him carefully, as if weighing whether to continue. Sometimes it feels like we're in the same place, but not really together. Daniel understood that feeling too well. His last months with Emily had been like that, two people sharing a space, but living separate lives. He said quietly. She gave a small shrug. "It's life." They stood there a moment longer before she glanced at her watch. "I should get going too. Enjoy your speech." "I will, or at least I'll try." As she walked toward the exit, Daniel felt a pull he hadn't expected. It wasn't dramatic or reckless. A quiet awareness that he wanted to talk to her again. The day moved quickly. Meetings, panels, handshakes, applause. Daniel delivered his presentation smoothly. Speaking about how architecture shapes human connection, how buildings are more than walls. They are spaces where people meet, grow, fall in love, or fall apart. As he spoke, he thought about rooms, about wrong doors, about how a simple error could lead to an unexpected moment. By evening, he felt drained but restless. Instead of returning to his room, he stopped by the hotel lounge. The lights were low, music soft, a few guests scattered across small tables. He ordered sparkling water and sat alone. 10 minutes later, he heard a familiar voice. "Mind if I join you?" He looked up. Rachel stood there, hands tucked into her sweater sleeves, alone, of course, he said. She sat across from him. "Mark had dinner with his clients," she explained. "I didn't feel like going." They started with small talk again, how the conference went. How she had spent the day walking by the lake, visiting a bookstore she had found online. "You like bookstores?" Daniel asked. "I work in publishing," she said. "Books feel like home." He smiled. "I design buildings for people I'll never meet." "You help shape stories people carry forever." She tilted her head. "That's a beautiful way to say it." As time passed, their words grew more honest. "Can I ask you something?" Rachel said softly. "Sure." At first, shock, then confusion, then, yeah, it felt like life interrupting itself. She looked down at her glass. "That's exactly how I felt." He didn't push her to explain. He let the silence invite more. After a few seconds, she spoke again. "Mark and I have been together 5 years. We moved in together 2 years ago. On paper, everything is right. Good jobs, shared plans. But lately, I feel invisible." The word hung between them. "It's not that he's cruel," she added quickly. "He's just elsewhere. I keep waiting for him to look at me the way he used to." She shook her head slightly. The lounge grew quieter as guests left. "Last night," she continued, "when you walked in, I saw your face. You didn't accuse us, you just asked a question." Daniel felt heat rise to his cheeks. It wasn't exactly heroic. "It felt real," she said. He didn't know what to do with that. He knew the line they stood near. He respected it. "I don't want to be the reason for anything complicated," he said carefully. "You're not," she replied. "This didn't start last night." He believed her. They talked about relationships, about how easy it is to drift apart without noticing, about how silence grows slowly, about how fear keeps people in places that no longer fit. "Do you ever feel like you're in the wrong room in life?" she asked suddenly. The question struck him. "Yes," he said. "I stayed in my last relationship longer than I should have. I kept hoping it would feel right again. And did it? No." They held each other's gaze. Not romantic, in a dramatic way, just deep understanding. After a while, Rachel looked toward the elevators. "I should go." Daniel nodded. They stood at the same time. For a second, the distance between them felt charged not with desire, but with possibility, with choice. "I'm glad we met," Daniel said. "Me too." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for listening." "Any time." She walked toward the elevators and disappeared inside. Daniel remained where he was, heart steady but changed. Back in his room, he packed slowly. His flight to Seattle left at 7 a.m. He folded his clothes with care, placed his laptop in its case, zipped the suitcase closed. Then he paused, stepped into the hallway, and looked down toward the elevator. After a moment of quiet thought, he walked to the 9th floor, room 927. He stood outside the door, unsure. He had no intention of knocking. He just needed closure, something simple and respectful. He took a hotel notepad from his pocket and wrote a short message. "Sometimes being in the wrong room helps you see what's right." He didn't sign it. He folded the note and placed it gently by the door. Then he walked back to the elevator without looking back. Weeks passed. Life returned to its rhythm in Seattle. Rainy mornings, drafting tables, client calls. But something inside Daniel felt lighter. Not because he expected anything, but because he had remembered what connection felt like. One evening, as he checked his email, he saw a subject line that made him pause. Room 814. His heart skipped. He opened it. "Hi, Daniel. I found your note. Thank you. I needed that reminder more than you know. I ended things with Mark, not because of you, but because I finally admitted the truth to myself. And if you're ever in Boston, maybe we can choose the same room on purpose." He read it twice. There was no drama in her words, no blame, just clarity. Daniel leaned back in his chair and stared out at the gray Seattle sky. For the first time in months, the future felt open. Sometimes love doesn't begin with fireworks. Sometimes it begins with a mistake at a hotel desk, with a door opening at the wrong time, with strangers standing in the same room. And sometimes that is exactly how the right story begins.